Hey everyone, what is the crack? Today we're going to finally answer that question. Should I buy the M10 or should I buy the Alpha? The two of them are really good wheels, but today we're going to go into more detail and find out which one is going to suit you best. Let's do it. So the Alpha and the M10 have a lot in common, so we're just going to put those things up on screen first. We've got wheel choice, wireless system, quick release and software. So wheel choice is the same for both wheels. You've got the GT1 rim, which is over here, and you've got the GT4 rim, which is this one over here. Both exceptional wheels for a standard wheel. Of course, you can also still fit your cube controls and the like to the Simagic wheelbases, provided you have a quick release hub. Next up is the wireless system, which again is the same in both the M10 and the Alpha. It's a proprietary wireless system that Simagic have developed, but it means that there are no external facing antennas, and the antenna is actually really close to the rim. So like unlike on a Simicube where it's at the back, it's at the front. Now with a Simicube I never experienced any disconnects either, but that's just something interesting to know, I guess. One of the things that I really like about the Simagic wheel system and wireless system is that you don't need a battery powered wheel. The wheelbase does provide power to the wheel, which makes the wheel choice really good, but it also means that your wireless system is really nice and reliable. You never have to charge your wheel or whatever. When you turn off your wheelbase, your wireless wheel switches off as well. It's just a really nice system. I highly recommend it. Next up is the quick release system. You guys know I'm a massive fan of quick releases, and especially the Simagic quick release. It's the same as an NRG system or a D1 spec system. I even did a dedicated video about this quick release. That's how much I like it. As for software, the software is good. There's not a hell of a lot that you can customize in it, but in a way that's kind of good. If this is your first DD wheel or whatever, you don't want to be overwhelmed by too many settings either. I think that it is good. It's not quite where it needs to be. It would be great if it had an advanced mode with just extra filters and tweaks, and preferably something where people could share their profiles. The software is a little bit clunky in that when you're updating your firmware or whatever, sometimes the messaging is a little bit, it looks like it's just been directly translated using Google Translate or something like that. Sometimes it's not very intuitive, but that said, within 5 minutes of installing the software, you're actually set up and ready to go. So it is really easy to get going and really easy to get results. The software it does need some work. Now we're straying into the area where there are actually differences. The M10 is a nice looking wheelbase and it's surprisingly small. The form factor of the M10 is quite recognizable, and they've got those fins at the side that double up as your T-slot nut channels, so that you can mount it up to 80/20 and all that, but they are also cooling fins, as the motor itself is just mated to that and uses the outer casing as a heatsink. Same as a lot of other direct drive wheels, the Alpha has a similar design, but it's a lot sleeker. In my opinion, the Simagic Alpha just looks that little bit better. It's really sleek. It looks a bit more like the Simicube, but it's actually quite a lot smaller than the Simicube. It has a tiny little footprint, and considering it's a more powerful motor than the M10 motor, you would think that it would be far larger, but it's actually a little bit smaller. As for the installation of the M10 is relatively simple. When I had mine, the mounting holes weren't really lining up with my universal plate, so I had to drill some holes, but it did come with brackets, and those brackets did mount quite easily, and they mated to my universal plate with absolutely no problem. Both the M10 and the Alpha have holes in the bottom so you can mount to a universal mounting plate. That was my preferred way to actually mount them, so that is why I drilled holes for the M10. For the Alpha, I didn't need to drill any holes, and that just worked out of the box. It was really handy, really easy. Now, one thing to note, the Alpha does not come with brackets to mount it on. The M10 does come with brackets, the Alpha does not come with mounting brackets. You can, however, buy really snazzy, nice mounting brackets. Just have to contact your local authorized reseller to see if they actually stock those, because I'm not sure what the stock availability of those is right now. So for the installation, I give them both 8 out of 10. They both have their pros, both have their cons, but 8 out of 10 I think is a fair result there. The next one on the list is the setup of the actual software. As I say, within minutes of actually installing the software, you can just use it. So with the software, you can make adjustments while you're actually in game, have it in a second screen or even in front of what you're doing, and you'll feel through the steering wheel, you'll feel straight away what your adjustments are actually doing. So it's really, really handy, really easy to set up. Setup gets an 8 out of 10 for me. Now it comes down to a deciding factor for a lot of people, the actual price. Now Simagic pricing is a little bit sporadic to say the least. Resellers can pretty much charge whatever they like. So sometimes you'll see it for really good value and sometimes you'll see it with rather inflated prices. At the end of the day, Simagic doesn't mandate how much people charge for the product. So unlike Fanatec, where a price is a price, Simagic, it's a little bit of a game of luck, unfortunately. That said, given the guide prices that I've featured in my videos and what Simagic recommends that people should be selling these for, the Simagic M10 is exceptional value in my opinion. In my opinion, it is the best value direct drive wheel on the market. I give it a 9 out of 10. I've pretty much only docked a Marc because you can't guarantee that the price is the price. For what you're getting around the €1,100 mark or the $1,100 mark, it is a great investment and I highly recommend it. The only reason that I've kind of docked a Marc here is because we just can't guarantee those prices, which really, really sucks, and I really would love if Simagic did something about that. I think that the Alpha is also very good value, but I don't think it's quite as good value as the Simagic M10. It comes in at around €1,650, $1,650, something like that, with the GT1 wheel. If you can get it for that price, I think it's good value. I don't think it's as good value as the M10. Hopefully people can get it for that value. As I say, it's a little bit of a game of luck at times. The next one, and again, really, really important, the actual force feedback. How does the force feedback compare? The force feedback on the M10 is really good. Now, before I say anything else, direct drive is always pretty much really, really good. You're always going to get a very, very good, clear, direct signal when it comes to direct drive. Things that make the difference are software and the encoders used and the type of motor. So the M10 is made with a different technology to the Alpha. The motor is actually a stepper motor. A stepper motor, when you turn it really slowly, you'll feel various steps in it. The Alpha is a servo motor. Servo motor is the preferred technology for a direct drive wheel. So in this case, for force feedback, the force feedback is just a lot clearer with the Alpha. You also get a lot more power with the Alpha. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. I think the sweet spot for force feedback is around the 20 Newton meter torque. When it goes to 20 Newton meter and above, especially with a good servo motor, it's very, very difficult to actually tell the difference. The Alpha is really, really good, really, really precise. I don't think it's as good as the Simagic SC2 when it comes to force feedback. I still give force feedback an 8 out of 10 here because I'm just measuring it on the overall scale of force feedback. So I'm including, you know, a 1 would be a Logitech wheel. If this force feedback scale was just for direct drive, it would be on the lower end of the scale. It'd probably be like a 2 or a 3 out of 10. But in the grand scheme of force feedback, the M10 gets an 8 out of 10. Next, moving on to power, both of these wheels have more than enough power to do you some injury. The main difference that you get with some extra power is just the ability to translate fine-grained details. Now, there is a kind of, people in the industry say that smaller motors often respond a lot better. I haven't noticed this, to be honest. With the M10, the Alpha, Simagic, Simplicity, the bigger motors aren't sluggish by any means. I don't know if that's compensated by software, but to a pleb like me, it's just not noticeable. So I wouldn't really buy into that too much. But the difference in power between the M10 and the Alpha is noticeable. Now, very, very important, if you have never used direct drive and you in a blind test were to try both wheels, you probably wouldn't notice much difference between them. Now, if a Simagic SC2 user, somebody who is very, very used to having very good force feedback, was to use both of those wheels, they would say that the power in the M10 just is a little bit lacking. It's a little bit closer to a high-end belt-driven wheel than it is to the SC2 Pro. 10 Newton meter torque is a lot of power, but it doesn't quite translate those fine details. It could just be the technology used, but the M10 doesn't translate the power the same way as the Alpha does. The Alpha does have more power. It's not perfect, but it is really, really good. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Maybe that's a little bit harsh, but 8 out of 10 for power for the Alpha. Next up on the list is smoothness. So the smoothness of the M10, I've already kind of suggested that As you turn it really, really slowly, you can feel the steps in the stepper motor. It's not something that bothered me when I used it. It is something that I noticed, especially at low speeds when you're exiting the pits or whatever. But once you're out and about, it actually does a really good job of hiding those steps. You don't really notice them. I don't really notice them anyway. But it is not exactly smooth. If you were to just spin it, you can feel that there's something behind it. As opposed to the Alpha, which is actually just super smooth. When you're moving that around, it just feels like there's nothing behind it. And when you feel those forces, it feels like they're coming straight through the actual wheels of a car. It's really, really nice, really, really smooth. The Alpha wins hands down with a 10 out of 10, and the M10 only gets a 7. Next up is the responsiveness. The responsiveness is a difficult one to tell, but the Alpha is just slightly more responsive than the M10. I think it's because of the more powerful motor or the motor technology again, but you can just feel when you hit that bump, it's very, very instant with the Alpha. It's still very good with the M10, but it's not quite as involved, it's not quite as good. Again, most people wouldn't notice the difference unless you spent a lot of time with direct drive wheels. Is the difference in responsiveness enough to warrant upgrading from an M10 to an Alpha? Probably not. If you already have an M10, just enjoy it. And finally, the overall experience of owning these wheels. I'm lucky enough to have owned both of these wheels. They are both really, really good for their own reasons. The Simagic M10 is an excellent, excellent first direct drive wheel, and most people who actually buy one will probably never need to upgrade again. The Alpha is better. It is a really, really nice, smoother wheel, and it's probably more suited to somebody who is training for real life or whatever. It's a really, really nice package, and the overall experience of owning both of these wheels is really, really great. I give it an 8 out of 10. The reason that I'm docking some marks is, as I mentioned, the uncertainty about pricing, the support and the support networks. You have to kind of go through your authorized resellers. Another reason is there's an owner group on Facebook which you get kind of directed to by Simagic, but it's also owned by Simagic, so it's kind of moderated and controlled by Simagic, which as far as an owners group goes, I don't really like. I like people to be able to speak their mind, talk about problems, all that kind of stuff, without the company's involvement, I guess. But overall, it's a great experience, and I highly recommend either of the Simagic wheels. I think they're just fantastic pieces of kit. I think they're great value for money. And yeah, I just really, really like them. And the final point that I've deducted from the overall experience is not necessarily the experience of owning one, it's actually the experience of buying one. The stock that people get seems to be sporadic. You've got the whole domestic market thing, you've got unauthorized resellers, you've got authorized resellers. It can be very difficult to get the right information. So when you're buying one, it's just a little bit difficult. And that's just not a great experience. Whereas with Fanatec or Simicube or whatever, it's pretty obvious. You just go somewhere, buy one, and you don't have to worry about who's authorized and who's not authorized, or whether it's a domestic model or not. So all of these headings have been made up by me, not just plucked out of the air, but these are things that people ask me about on a regular basis when it comes to comparing the M10 to the Alpha. So I haven't actually added up the totals of these columns yet. I don't know which one's going to win. I would think that it's going to be the Alpha because it wins in quite a lot of categories, but at the same time the M10 is exceptional value for money, so I'm not 100% sure. I'm just going to go tot them up. So there you have it. Today's winner is the Simagic Alpha on paper, but ultimately, and this is really, really important, buy the one that you can afford. If you can afford, and if you can actually get hold of stock of the M10, buy it. If you can do the same for Alpha, buy it. If you're on the fence and you're not 100% sure, you don't really want to commit to the Alpha, you can afford an M10 and you can get one, just buy it. You're going to be able to sell your Simagic M10 secondhand quite easily for almost what you paid for it. Same goes for the Alpha. If you ever choose to upgrade the Alpha, that's fine. So that's pretty much it for me. I hope that this was really, really useful for you. Thank you very much for subscribing. Hit that subscribe button in the bottom corner. I'm Lawrence. Thanks a million. Chat to you later.